The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
We are off and running. Hello to you. He's Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker, and we have got a lot going on. Florida does the unthinkable in offering up Tim Tebow's jersey, and we'll discuss the Vols that have their jerseys retired, and are there any others that still should? Also, is Tennessee wide receiver you again? Did they take that title back from Clemson, who actually got that title at Tennessee's detriment? We'll take a look at Tennessee's defensive line after the first week of spring practice. Tennessee back on the practice field on Tuesday. A look at the Final Four and what Tennessee needs to do to make the Final Four. By the end of this program, Caleb Calhoun, I will tell you, hands down, no question, exactly what Tennessee needs to do to make the Final Four within 3 years. I can get it done. I'm basically Danny White without the title, without the office, and without the big fat paycheck. But I will be able to tell you by the end of the program exactly what they need to do. What do you think of that? That's pretty strong.
All right, I'm all ears. I'll see how it goes.
And the thing I love about Caleb, he'll tell me if I'm dead wrong. So here we go. Good morning, Caleb. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. How are you doing this Tuesday morning, Dave?
I'm doing well. So we've got a lot of things to get to. I do want to go ahead and throw out the Craven Wings today's tough question, and we're going to get into jersey numbers a little bit later. So if you haven't gone to our Twitter feed yet, go ahead and do that and follow the Dave Hooker, and it used to be the Dave Hooker Show, so don't think that I'm like one of those ego guys. Or you can also follow OTH Sports Media. So today's tough question brought to you by Craven Wings, and Craven is fantastic. The new Saturday brunch is phenomenal. For those around Knoxville that may remember the Italian Market and Grill brunch, it's very much like that. It's through the roof good, and their wings are just incredible. Proud to bring them on board, excited about it. So let's go ahead and get to that. We'll start on that tip. It is the Craven Wings today's tough question, and it is right now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So tell me about Florida. What is Florida doing with Tim Tebow's iconic number and the best player? If you want to look at resume ever to play at the University of Florida, you could argue Steve Spurrier, but he didn't win a national title. You could argue Steve Spurrier as a whole, his career. But if you want to talk about just a player, it's got to be Tim Tebow, I would think, because they were pretty much dormant through the 80s and bad for a lot of the modern era of college football until the 90s. So tell me what Florida's doing and handing out Tim Tebow's coveted sacred number.
Yes, they are handing out Graham Mertz, the Wisconsin transfer. He is going to be allowed to wear Tim Tebow's number 15. Kind of threw me off when I saw that story. I think it's one of two people. I think it's either Tim Tebow or Danny Warfel. You could really debate either one for the best. I'm probably with you. I probably lean more Tim Tebow than Danny Warfel, but I would listen to an argument for Danny Warfel. But I don't see how both of those numbers aren't retired. I was just looking it up. Apparently, it doesn't look like Florida is into retiring numbers. They don't have any numbers retired. And so maybe it's a thing where Florida's best players, to be fair, were not the biggest stars in the NFL. If you look at Tennessee's history of retiring numbers, with some exceptions, typically they are NFL legends along with All-Americans at Tennessee. And obviously Tim Tebow and Daniel Warfel were not anything to celebrate in the pros.
No, but should that even matter, really?
I don't think it should, because I don't think it should matter at Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee has the right criteria for retiring numbers, if I'm being honest with you. I think what you did at Tennessee should matter more than what you did after playing at Tennessee.
No, I totally agree. And Mike Hamilton at the time came up with this retiring numbers thing and mixed reviews, to be nice about it. But what was the criteria, if you can remind everybody, because it was pretty goofy and it did include the NFL. I felt like it was tailor-made to include Peyton Manning, Reggie White, and Doug Atkins. But if you can, just kind of give me the criteria again. It was odd at the time. It's going to sound even stranger now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the exact policy. I know that they had to have like a lot of success at Tennessee during their career. They have to have graduated and left in good academic standing. And they have to, I believe they can't be eligible till like 5 years after they leave the school. Oh, and then they have to achieve 3 of 5 criteria. They have to either be SEC Player of the Year, National Award Player of the Year, Sullivan, something like that, first team All-American, record holder in a significant category, or have won a national championship during their tenure. And you have to have 3 of those 5, but it was so arbitrary. And it turned into just, again, with the exception of Johnny Majors, whose number was retired in 2012, who's number 45, every other retired jersey for Tennessee is a World War II veteran who obviously you give respect to, or arguably the greatest player ever at their position in the NFL.
Right. And for those that don't know, Doug Atkins was just a freak athlete. I mean, like J.J. Watt times 10. Think about that type of guy jumping over offensive linemen. He was very, very special. We all know what Peyton Manning was. And then Reggie White. I always thought that Reggie White of the 3 should have been the least likely. Now, he had a great NFL career, but he really only had 1 good year at Tennessee. Please hit that thumbs up button, that likes button helps us bring more people in. We greatly appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed, do that. But Reggie White just had 1 good year at Tennessee, and he was fantastic in the NFL. Obviously, he transformed free agency along with Deion Sanders in the early 90s, but I always thought that was a bit of a reach. I mean, who did more for a program? Was it Reggie White, who also was involved with some controversial things with some fans and the stance he took that I supported him on with black churches being burned in the Knoxville area, but it was polarizing to say the very least. Yeah, there are a lot of players I could pick. T. Martin, I would have retired his number perhaps before Reggie White. And to me, what you do in the Al Wilson, to me, what you do in the NFL has no bearing on whether or not you should have your number retired. But Tennessee, specifically in their criteria, mentioned that as a factor. First, Caleb, what was your take on that years ago?
Yeah, I think that was an emotional move because Reggie White had died the year that they decided to retire his number. That was when they did the whole thing. And Reggie White, I believe that was the first number they retired. And it was for the Ole Miss game. I was with you. I think Reggie White's NFL career in that one senior season has people. I was not around, so people who were following Tennessee in the early 80s, if you were following them then, please correct me. But I have a hard time seeing how he was a beloved player during that entire run relative to, like you said, Al Wilson. I even say a John Henderson. John Henderson won the Outlet Trophy, was a 2-time All-American, not just a 1-year All-American. And yeah, he didn't have Reggie White's NFL career, but he had a pretty decent NFL career. And I say Eric Berry. I would take Eric Berry above Reggie White. I know Eric Berry didn't graduate, to be fair. So he may have graduated, but he didn't stay all 4 years. So I get if you don't want to.
But he was like one of those phenoms, just like you wouldn't hold it against Peyton Manning had he gone a year early. He was that good. When the head coach comes out and says, you just need to go, you just need to go. Travis says on our screen, Florida was going to retire anyone's number, it would be Tebow's first. This is a blatant last-ditch effort to get a transfer. I completely agree. And that's where these coaches are getting desperate because they've lost leverage. They used to have leverage, and you would say to yourself at Tennessee, no, number 16 is not available, period, in the discussion. Well, if Nico Imaleva comes in and says, I got to have 16 or I'm not coming, would Josh Heupel fold at that? I would think that a lot of coaches would. I don't want to speak on Heupel's behalf. So I asked this question this morning. It's today's tough question brought to you by Craven Wings. Again, try out their wings. Florida's reintroducing Tim Tebow's jersey for transfer. Should any Vol have their number retired? If so, who? And so far, 33% say nope, 33% say Inky Johnson, who obviously had a debilitating injury during his playing days. And nobody has voted for Hendon Hooker. I put up there for purely recency bias. I don't really think that his number should be retired. And then should any Vol have their number retired? Anyone but the World War II vets. So be sure and never, ever, ever reintroduce those numbers. Those are kind of special and a part of Tennessee lore. And I know that's been, 70 years ago, but those need to be remembered even as it becomes part of the distant past.
Yes, these are people who gave up their lives to go fight in World War II and passed away, obviously. I as someone who, as a student of history, I don't think people understand how difficult of a time that was for college athletics, World War II, and the sacrifices that were made by so many people. Tennessee on the front lines of this. Tennessee had to give up their coach for World War II. And a lot of people, my story on this is a lot of people don't realize that the 1940 election, both candidates, including FDR, was saying, we're going to keep you out of war. We're going to keep you out of war. We're not going to keep you out of war. And the story goes that America got into World War II after Pearl Harbor. Well, that was December 7th, 1941. Neyland was called back to service in 1940, meaning they kind of knew they were about to get into the war. That's all you have to know, is to know that they were about to enter World War II. They called Neyland to service a year ahead of time before they got into the war.
Yeah, and sure enough, to know what happened there. There was this guy in Germany that wasn't very liked. And Travis says the Florida penal system has a bunch of the ex-Gators numbers. That's pretty good, Travis.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Urban Meyer could help out dishing out those numbers.
Kudos to that. Now, Rebecca asked a question. Speaking of Nico, do we know why his number has changed from 8 to 12? Sorry, it's a little off topic. He kind of mumbled over the answer, didn't give a really good answer as to that. And usually he's very well spoken, especially when he says his last name. Ia Maleava. I think this was a coach's thing, the same reason he went out there fourth string day one, but he's not the fourth string quarterback. Come on, he's second string. To me, having a single digit number means something. So I think that they just wanted him to earn back that number. And I think it's just a motivational coaching thing, Rebecca, but he may fall in love with 12. 12
Maybe
doesn't
he thinks it's Tom Brady.
Yeah, maybe he is the next Tom Brady, or the Tom Brady of college. Maybe he'll win like 18 national championships at Tennessee. What Tom Brady ended up with, how many?
7 Super Bowls.
7.
Yeah. The crazy part about the Tom Brady-Peyton Manning rivalry is that Michigan won the national championship the year before Tom Brady became the starter. Tennessee won it the year after Peyton Manning was the starter. And those were back-to-back years, 97, 98.
Okay. True. Let me ask you this. It's also weird that Charles Woodson and Peyton Manning were 1-2 in the Heisman, respectively, and they both retired the same year, and they were the oldest players at the time in the NFL, which is very strange. All right, so let me just ask you this. How coveted are these? So if a prospect shows up and says, I've got to have number 16, would you give it away?
My first question is...
I'm going to Georgia. I'm the highest rated quarterback of 2026, and I'm going to Georgia unless you give me 16.
What's the reasoning?
I've always worn 16. My dad wore 16. My grandfather wore 16. My great-grandfather wore 16. Nothing real.
Yeah, but like, okay, I was going to say, like, if something like my father passed away and wore 16, and it just... So here's the thing. The only reason I'm debating this is I'm like, do you want a kid like that? Because you're getting, if it's not some real serious reason, you're kind of getting a kid for the wrong reasons. So it becomes, you really even want a kid like that. But from the other side, would I sacrifice my future to hold on to the number 16 for Peyton Manning? No. I'm going to defend Florida on this. I'm not a fan of retiring numbers. World War II veterans, one thing. Again, they fought in the war for their country.
We'll take that off the table.
Yeah, completely off the table. I don't think any of Tennessee's other 4 retired numbers, Johnny Majors, Peyton Manning, Doug Atkins, Reggie White, none of those numbers should be retired to me. I don't think numbers are – I do what – hang their like name in the rafters or something. Put their name up there. Give them a statue, something like that.
I do I do like the retired numbers, and that was a huge debate when they retired these numbers. But that's kind of where we are, and the people on the message board agree with you. They don't like the concept of retired numbers as a whole, but that's where we are. But if a prospect showed up and said, "I have got to have Peyton Manning, Reggie White's, or Doug Atkins' number, or I'm not coming," and this is the top prospect in the nation, it's not even close. It's an Arch Manning, it's a Nico, whatever. And he says, "I'm going to Georgia if I don't get that number." What would you do if you're Josh Heupel? And the message board, what would you do? Would you give the kid the number? I want to hear.
Again, no. And I say no, not to protect Peyton Manning's number, but because I don't know if I want a top prospect that's going to think that way. I mean, I do. Maybe this is a little like wholesome for me, but like you're getting a kid for the wrong reason at that point. That's not that's they're going to be a detriment from an intangible perspective.
My answer with Smoky Mountain Red, who says I would, it's just a number, is a big heck yeah, absolutely. I'd call Peyton Manning and I would say, "Hey man, this kid wants your number. I think it's a huge, monstrous deal that we get him. Yeah, I know you love the Vols. You want what's best for the Vols. Can we give away your number?" And if he says no, I would say, "I'm sorry, but we're giving away your number."
But Dave, my question is, forget throw Peyton Manning or the number aside for a minute. Do you think a recruit who is going to demand a number is the type of player you want on your team?
Yeah, he takes pride in himself. He wants he wants that number on his chest because he's worn it. Takes pride in his play. You look better, you play better. All of that, yeah. No, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, would I say to myself, "That kid's a little petty"? Yes, I would, but it wouldn't prevent me from getting a game-changing player. And let's be real frank here. How many game-changing prospects has Tennessee actually been in the running with in the final days of recruiting? Who other than Nico? Maybe some people thought Khalil McKenzie. There were some other guys you could throw in.
I thought Bryce Brown was going to be one. And boy.
Okay, Bryce Brown's fair because he was highly touted. I usually wouldn't put a running back in that category just out of policy. But, I mean, how many guys are you in the running for that? One every 20 years?
No, you're right. That's true. I mean, there's very few surefire like game changers. I think everybody knew Eric Berry was going to be one. I remember when Eric Berry committed out of Georgia at the time in 2000. It was actually like over December of 2006, right before the Outback Bowl that year. But everybody kind of knew he was going to be a star immediately. And I think that's the last player that – is he the last dynamic game changer that you knew was going to be that and then became that for Tennessee?
He turned out to be way better than I thought he would. I mean, I thought he was going to be very good. I thought he was a lock, stock, all-SEC player. He turned out to be a consensus unanimous All-American.
Yeah.
So –
they didn't even start him the first game against Cal. Don't even get me started on that.
Yeah. Rebecca says, "I kind of think they sound like a diva out of respect of a retired number. I wouldn't even ask." I wouldn't either. And I would be disappointed if my son asked. But if they do ask, I mean, Nico is somewhat of a diva. Come on. And there's nothing wrong with being a diva.
But there's a different level of this. Look, I think we're speaking on different wavelengths here. I'm not saying this out of respect for the retired number because I don't really care about the retired number. I just don't. I don't think
you just don't like the kid being ego driven.
That ego driven to say a number. I do believe this. I believe this much with a kid or a school. I think it's really important to have kids that want to play for your school when you're trying to win. I really do think that. I think it's really important to have kids that really want to play for you and your school. And they're likely to play harder and tougher. If they're so fickle that a number could change it, they may not be that committed to your school at that point.
Okay, well, who is committed nowadays? They're getting paid to come, and they can transfer in a heartbeat.
I mean, look, I'm not trying to like talk in a nostalgic way, but I think half the reason for that 98 national championship team was you had a lot of players that were just committed to Tennessee. Like 70% of that roster was from within the state, if I remember correctly.
Okay, let me give you an example. When Caleb joined us, I knew that Caleb would be an incredible addition to Off the Hook Sports, and I was excited about it. And I was just fired up that he was going to join us because I think he's an incredible mix of a great writer, a great host. I think he gets it, and that's rare. If Caleb said to me, all right, I want to work with you at Off the Hook Sports, which thankfully he did. He said, but from now on, I want to be called Caleb Manning. That's my air name. I would say, all right.
That's a little different, though.
I would say,
choosing your name.
I would have no problem with that.
You're allowed to choose your byline wherever you go. So, I mean, like,
but it would be, but I would think to myself in the back of my head, that's a little weird, but I would do it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, like, okay, that's a little different. I like to be I demand to go by Caleb. My first name's actually John. And I'm demanding that I go by Caleb. So am I a diva for that, Dave?
No, I'm not even going to tell you my first name, but if you download the app, you'll see it there. I've been trying to get it taken down. Travis says, you will forever be Caleb Manning to me. So Caleb Manning on the program.
Wouldn't it be so great if Dave's first name were John Hooker?
So it would be good. Why, it's actually worse. 4 Downs brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. A great vision is just a phone call away. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn can do LASIK, cataracts. Look at me. No contacts, no glasses. I'm loving it. I got my checkup tomorrow. I look forward to the checkups because I know the doctors really care. Doctors at other places, even in Knoxville, they'll have fly-in from Florida. It's just not the same. So 4 Downs as I'm all over the place. Our production meeting at 5 a.m. this morning, I just went off in a total different direction based off where we were going. But here we go. 4 Downs right now brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Congratulations, by the way, to Jonathan Crompton, who was named the head coach of his high school, Tuscola High School, which is really cool. All right, so 4 Downs. Pretty simple. First down, guy asked for Peyton Manning's number. Do you give it to him, yay or nay?
Yay, just because I'm not that big on.
Oh, okay. Look at him. Caleb Manning. Caleb Atkins coming around. All right. Reggie White.
Yes. I don't think Reggie White's number should have been retired in the first place. If we were going to retire numbers, I'm with you on that. So, yeah.
Would you even ask his family? That's kind of tough when the guy's passed away.
Well, Doug Atkins has passed away, and Johnny
I'm getting to Doug.
Okay.
No. Doug Atkins, would you give his number away if somebody said I gotta have it?
Yes.
World War II veterans.
No.
No way, no how. I agree with that. I agree with that completely. There's no way I would give that up. If so, I would consider you a diva. If I sat down and said, especially nowadays, like when I was coming out of high school and college, there hadn't been a war in forever. Like the 80s, we were all afraid of nuclear Armageddon, but nothing really ever happened. Nowadays, a war has been going on. So if you don't have some sort of understanding of what war means and the fact that these guys were lost in the biggest world war, the biggest war of them all, then I don't know what to tell you. So that's a guy that would cross the line into what I don't want. So I think we're on the same wavelength now. If a guy said, I have got to have 62, and I don't care if it's a World War II veteran and he died in the war, I've got to have 62, I'd say, well, enjoy Athens. Have a great time in Tuscaloosa. Deuces. Peace out.
Right. I will say, speaking as someone who is someone whose entire adult life has seen this country at war, where it's a little harder for kids nowadays is if they don't know history, they would think World War II is similar to these wars we're fighting now, which there's a lot of justified disdain and fatigue from these wars because it's like, what's our mission in all these 7 countries we're in? Whereas at least in World War II, you'd have to teach them there was a clear mission in World War II. There was a very clear, direct mission. Yes. Take out Germany, take out Japan.
Yes, and prevent us from dictatorships and communism. Yeah, I mean, that you're right. That was very clear. If you don't get that, then I'm sorry, you ain't getting that number, and I might pull the scholarship right there.
Right.
At the very mention of that. Portions of the program brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. City Heating and Air Conditioning. It's phenomenal. I mean, if your HVAC unit needs some love, and it might with the weather starting to get warm, and thank goodness it did. Look at me. I got a little sun yesterday. I wrote by the pool at my gym. Do you notice that, Caleb? How am I looking?
I think you're looking great.
Thanks.
You're looking great.
Thanks. I'm looking okay, but not nearly as good as the service at City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. They are phenomenal. We're going to have a Tennessee defensive line preview / update as the Vols hit the practice field again today. Also, the unconventional Final Four. And I told you this, and I mean it. I'm going to tell you how Tennessee can be in the Final Four by 2023, by 2026. I'm going to tell you exactly how Tennessee can be in the Final Four. And it's easy, and it's simple, and it's all but a guarantee. It's that easy. Also, is Tennessee athletics at its most stable point since the 1990s? That sounds about right. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter at the Dave Hooker. And are you just Caleb Calhoun, or are you the Caleb Calhoun?
I am just Caleb Calhoun.
I blame it. Some other guy in Britain, he's like a soccer ref, has Dave Hooker. I want it. It used to be the Dave Hooker Show, and now it sounds like I'm a pretentious jerk, the Dave Hooker. Also, OTH Sports Media, so you can take part in our polls. And it's brought to you by Craven Wings, never frozen, always just fantastic.
And Craving Wings South North Shore location, where we've heard people say that you can get the best wings in East Tennessee. Pero ¿quién es este? El número 87, Jacob Warren.
I'll just do 6 of my sauce 87, please.
Imposible, señorita. Dale 6 más. Look at these wings. Perfectas, deliciosas, fantásticas.
Man, I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds awesome. How do you say fresh, never frozen in Spanish?
Frescas, nunca congeladas. Make your way to Craving Wings and get you 6 más.
But what was funny about Gators, we were a full continuum of care at that time. We had detox, we had inpatient, we had outpatient. So we were doing a lot of the things that we do now. But now we just do them so much better. It's really a simple program, but we're complicated people. I am what I am, and now I got to do something about it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show.
Who?
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
When I grew up, there was no question that the team in my hometown, the team that I sold programs for when I was 12 years old, and my mother made a horrible decision just dropping me off in a sea of orange. Fortunately, it was very safe, and maybe 14. And I would sell programs for $2. You'd make 20 cents a program, and I would sell just enough to buy myself a Coke and a hot dog in Neyland Stadium. But really what I cared about is the free ticket. And when I grew up, there was zero question who wide receiver U was. Alvin Harper, Carl Pickens, Stanley Morgan. I could go on and on and on. And it somewhat continued, although I think Joey Kent, as Caleb has put out there before, his numbers were a little inflated playing with Peyton Manning, but Peerless Price was certainly special. Somewhat continued again with Dante Stallworth and Kelly Washington. But all along those times in the late 90s and early 2000s, you saw teams kind of picking away at the wide receiver U title when there used to be zero question. I mean, zero question. Nobody else even argued it. Now, Tennessee, because of the decade of dysfunction that they went through, is certainly not wide receiver U. Certainly not. No question about it. That has probably been Clemson at Tennessee's behest, losing guys like T. Higgins, losing guys like Amari Rodgers. And Clemson at one point had a collection when they won the national title, their last one. I thought they had maybe the best group of receivers I had seen, except for Tennessee in that Pickens group. They were very, very good. And I wonder now, has Tennessee taken that wide receiver U title back from Clemson? So two-part question for you, Caleb Calhoun, Caleb Manning. Two-part question. It's a thing now. Things stick in my head. But Caleb, two-part question. A, has Tennessee wrestled that back from Clemson already? If not, B, will they? What say you, sir?
I think they will. I think the wide receiver U, should we say the wide receiver U title is vacant right now? Because I think Clemson's already lost it. I just don't know if Tennessee's wrestled it back, but I think they will. They started the process with Jalen Hyatt winning the Biletnikoff Award. You got to do a little more than one player winning the Biletnikoff Award, though, obviously. Alabama's still going to compete because Alabama's produced some amazing receivers since 2014.
Yeah, it's almost like their receivers get overlooked because their entire program is so good.
Yeah, exactly. And we're forgetting that since Nick Saban embraced tempo in 2014, which he's going away from it now, that's a big benefit to Tennessee taking this title back. But once they embraced tempo in 2014, they just had an insane run of wide receivers that obviously maximized with Devontae Smith winning the Heisman Trophy. And I think now you're seeing, look, let's call it what it is. Clemson last year could not find a receiver. They couldn't find anybody to go to all season last year if you were watching them. That was a big reason for the issues in their passing game. You can go to local news sites all throughout South Carolina and you'll read story after story from last year saying where are Clemson's wide receivers, what's going on, who's stepping up. There's a huge void for Tennessee to fill. If Deontay Thornton does what I think he's going to do, and you know how high I am on Deontay Thornton, if he lives up to that this year, Tennessee's got it back. Because you're going to have Jalen Hyatt winning the Biletnikoff. I think Cedric Tillman's going to be a great a good NFL receiver. I think Brew McCoy has a ton of NFL potential. I think we all agree in terms of NFL prospects, Brew McCoy is the best on this roster, isn't he?
As far as NFL prospects, he's one of the best players in the SEC.
Yes, exactly.
Regardless of position.
Right. Oh, wow. Going there. That makes sense, too, though. I can't disagree.
But I got him in the first-round pick, so how many guys out of the SEC go in the first round year in and year out? 12, 14?
Probably
so
like that.
That to me is, I think he's a top 12 type of talent in the SEC right now when he steps on the field.
Yeah, so you have Brew McCoy. You have Dante Thornton, who may not be the best NFL prospect, but is definitely the best prospect to put up a lot of yards and stats in Josh Heupel's offense. You still have Squirrel White, who can really benefit from this offense.
Squirrel White is getting more run now than Thornton. Now it's just week one, a spring camp, and Thornton just
Nico was on the fourth team at week one.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And we will have a practice update based off week one coming up a little bit later. Okay, but Thornton is more physically gifted in a lot of ways. What I like about Squirrel White, not to get sidetracked, is his shiftiness. Makes me think of like a Julian Edelman guy that in the pros will be able to just find open seams all the time. So,
but you have to have some deadly accuracy to find those type of guys.
Yes,
Milton
and you got to
was
get the ball out quick, and you got to read quick.
Yeah.
I will say this. I think that Tennessee has not wrestled it away yet, but I think after this year, it will be wrestled away, and Tennessee will be considered wide receiver U for a couple of different reasons. I think that Jalen Hyatt will be drafted high, although I question his NFL ability as a complete, well-rounded receiver. I think that Cedric Tillman will be drafted high, and I don't question his ability whatsoever. So there's two right there. And then what do you have stepping up? You didn't even mention the name Ramel Keaton, who, if that's your Craig Faulkner, if you remember that.
I know Craig Faulkner.
Okay,
Yeah.
if that's your Craig Faulkner, that's your like third most talented receiver. You're in pretty darn good shape, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Look, I've always felt Ramel Keaton could be a number one receiver if he was forced into it. He just hasn't been forced into it because of Cedric Tillman and Brew McCoy. But Ramel Keaton makes the clutch catches for Tennessee. I don't know if anybody ever notices that. When you need a play, he's there. He had the diving catch against Florida. He had the catch on that last drive against Alabama. I mean, yeah, Jalen Hyatt was the star against Alabama, but Ramel Keaton had the most important catch in that game. And so I think that, look, I'm a huge fan of Ramel Keaton. Again, Craig Faulkner was good one. I always saw Jermaine Copeland with Ramel Keaton, and I saw Brett Smith with Ramel Keaton too. Those two guys.
I can see both of those. Tennessee will be wide receiver U, and it's going to be soon. It's going to be perhaps after this year. And I believe that because I think Joe Milton will be good enough, or Nico, and I'm not being a Joe Milton hater, Nico will be good enough this year to keep the flow going, so to speak. And then after that, I think that you'll see Nico hit kind of another level, and then you'll see the receivers benefit from that. So, yes, I think that Tennessee will be wide receiver U by 2025, 2026. When you start talking about guys like Squirrel White who have 2 years of eligibility, guys like Thornton that want to be a part of the program, guys like Brew McCoy who is just learning the offense, or Ramel Keaton who continues to ascend, I have no question in my mind, Caleb, that Tennessee will be wide receiver U. Part of that will be based off Tennessee's ability at quarterback and Josh Heupel's scheme, but it doesn't matter. Tennessee was a little bit ahead of the curve when they ran a pro style in the late 80s and early 90s. So
should have won a national championship with that talent.
Yeah, no question. The receivers benefited from that. So I will, yeah, I don't have any question. I think they're more likely to be wide receiver U than quarterback U. I think you need a run of 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks before you get to that point. And yeah, I mean, I think Clemson, you're right, has released the grip on that award, and I think Tennessee picks it up within a couple of years.
Not to mention, we should mention this. Sonny Dykes, not his offensive coordinator from last year, is now at Clemson. Garrett Riley, I believe is his name.
Yes.
And the
Lincoln's brother.
Okay, yes. The air raid is a pass-happy system that spreads the ball around a lot more. So you don't Josh Heupel, as we've talked about, likes to shorten the rotation. He likes 2 or 3 guys. That was it. Whereas the air raid really goes 5 or 6 deep. Like last year, yeah, they had a 1,000-yard receiver, but he only had like 1,039, and it was just barely over. It wasn't Jalen Hyatt numbers. And so you're going to see a lot more of that than you would have in what Clemson used to run. It's I don't know what your philosophy is on shortening rotations or not. I'm a big believer in it because I covered Tennessee in 2005 and 2006. And I think one of the biggest benefits to Eric Ainge improving, I don't know how you feel about it, was David Cutcliffe came in and said, we're going to have 2 receivers. That's it. And Robert Meacham's your go-to guy.
I agree. I think it's tough to get in a flow at receiver if you don't play consistently. Running backs have said that for years, and I thought that was a bunch of bull, quite frankly. I mean, I think you can go in there, and I don't think you need to get in a flow as a running back, but I do think that you need to get in a flow as a receiver, especially in this offense. And I think that Tennessee's conditioning program is so good that you don't have to play multiple guys. Let's not forget. I mean, this conditioning program has to be right up at the top of anybody in the nation to run this type of offense. So I do want to get to a little bit of Tennessee basketball before we get too far removed from that, because I told you that I would tell you exactly how the Vols could be in the Final Four by 2027. Will you give me till 2027? And I'll tell you. And it's lock, stock, and barrel. It's not even close. Are you excited?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Are you what the H-ing yourself?
I'm what the H in these collectives. Why have you not been giving any money to basketball? Or why has Rick Barnes not been more involved with getting money for basketball? What the H is going on there? Have you taken a look at Miami? Do you know much about Miami and the run that they've been on? Because Miami is not a basketball school, in case you haven't heard. But Miami has been on this incredible run, and they'll play UConn in the Final Four. Well, why will they play UConn in the Final Four? Well, I'm going to tell you. Because it's NIL. They've got this really shady cat down there named Ruiz who decided to bring in a bunch of money, and they are playing the game in basketball, and basketball is easier to make an impact. Look at Miami. The Hurricanes' top players have been affected by NIL money. Nigel Pack and Norshad Amier, they transferred from Kansas State and Arkansas State. So you can go one of two ways. You can get the Bronny Jameses of the world and pay him a bunch of money by the high school route, or you can get guys, and we're seeing, I think John Calipari do some of this, you can get guys that have a little bit more experience, but that aren't happy with their current school. That's what Miami did. They also had to talk Isaiah Wong into staying thanks to some cash. So why in the world does Tennessee not have an impact player, a scorer that is on their basketball team that we can point to like Nico and say, NIL did that? Did anybody go to Kennedy Chandler and say, hey, here's a bunch of cash to stay? Because he's making about $4.9 million. I looked it up over 4 years. That's not an insurmountable amount of money. I can tell you that Jacob Warren, when he decided to come back, he weighed it against the league minimum in the NFL, which was about $750K. So is he making $750K as a student athlete at Tennessee? No, he's not. But he's making at least comparable money to live good, have a good time in college, and you could have gotten, I think, Kennedy Chandler somewhere in that realm. I saw Nico on a Walmart commercial. A Walmart commercial, for goodness sake, on Instagram. I don't know if you saw that. That's Walmart. That's not Bob's Used Cars on Kingston Pike. That's Walmart. So if you can do that in football, what the H? Why can't you do that in basketball? And is it Rick Barnes' fault? Is it Spire or some collective group's fault because they want to focus on football? What's going on there? One impact player would have changed this team completely.
Well, theoretically, yes, but as I've told you in the past, as I've talked about in the past, and I think you and I both agree on this, Rick Barnes is not the best at meshing an impact player in with the team that he's got. He's never been that type of coach. He keeps his system kind of going the way it is. He runs that flex offense. And because remember, Julian Phillips was supposed to be that impact player. We were talking of Julian Phillips as a lesser Kevin Durant as Rick Barnes knew Kevin Durant. Does anybody think he's anywhere close to Kevin Durant after seeing him this past year? Julian Phillips.
Okay, well then the answer to what the H is, he apparently can't deal with the new day and age of college basketball, which I believe, and I've said before, is going to go through a renaissance because of transfers and NIL players. I think more guys are going to stick. But then if he can't handle it, then that's another strike against him and a reason to maybe look elsewhere.
So Dave, you're coming to my side that maybe Danny White could do better.
I don't doubt that he could do better. I also think he could do worse.
So I think that Rick Barnes I think where Tennessee can rely on NIL, given the style of coaching Rick Barnes does, you hit the nail on the head. The NIL for Tennessee should be used to keep players there for another year or two. Because I think the deadliest type of teams that Rick Barnes coaches are the ones that have played together for 2 or 3 years, that have developed under his system, that kind of developed with each other. We've seen that before. That Tennessee team that was number 1 in 130 games, there was not one 4-star recruit in the rotation on that team. Not one. And Grant Williams was a 3-star. Admiral Schofield was a 3-star. Jordan Bone. Kyle Alexander. I can go down the list. There were no 4-star or 5-stars. The thing was they had played together for 2 to 3 years at that point, and Rick Barnes develops players so incredibly well. So what I think Tennessee should be doing with NIL is not using it to get a splash transfer. I think they should be using it to keep this exact same team that Rick Barnes coached this year together. Just make sure everybody comes back. Even though Tyreek Key is gone, again, no disrespect, Tyreek Key, but he's not going to be that big of a loss. I think that you get everybody back next year. I think just the experience of playing together and working and developing in Rick Barnes' system gives Tennessee an edge over so many teams, because this is the state of college basketball right now. You're right. This is where NIL is going to deliver college basketball renaissance. I think the Final Four this weekend is garbage. I'm just going to say it straight up. I think it's garbage. It is a default Final Four because the top teams are not as good as the top teams used to be. Experience is outweighing talent right now because nobody's coaching at the Blue Bloods that get the one and dones in the NBA prospects anymore. And that's the problem.
Well, I think that you're going to see the playing field get more level in college basketball. And I don't hate that. I don't really have a problem with that. But I get back to specifically why Tennessee basketball doesn't have that impact player, whether it's Kennedy Chandler or whether it's a high school kid or a transfer like Miami went that route. Why is the question I have. And if you don't have an answer for me, Rick Barnes, and I'm doing the postseason review, we got a little bit of a problem. Okay. If you don't have a reason, I don't like those guys. I don't believe players should be paid, whatever. If you don't have a pretty solid reason, I got a problem in your postseason review.
Oh, no, I think Rick Barnes has come out and embraced NIL. Now, he hasn't embraced it the way Tennessee football has embraced it. Rick Barnes did openly complain about NIL being used as a recruiting tool, which technically I know they're not supposed to do. We all know they're doing it. And we all know Tennessee football is barely hiding the fact that they're using it as a recruiting tool at this point.
Okay, but I don't even like that. I don't even like the fact that he would say, and please hit that thumbs up button, the like button. We appreciate it. I don't even like the fact that he would say that he doesn't like NIL. If I'm a Clemson fan, I don't like that.
Well, he didn't say he didn't like NIL. He said he doesn't like it used as a recruiting tool.
Well, then don't say that.
No, I mean, I'm with you.
Never, ever say that. I don't care if you believe it.
Because, and the NCAA technically says you're not supposed to use it as a recruiting tool. How are you going to stop it? How are you going to stop using NIL to recruit athletes? That's happening all over, and we know it's happening everywhere. And so I agree. I don't think Barnes backs off NIL to get impact players. I don't. I mean, there's still a few weeks in recruiting. He didn't nail Julian Phillips until after the season last year. So we don't know what's going to happen over the next few weeks in recruiting. I think that for Rick Barnes, though, I don't think it's that he doesn't go for the impact player. I think the impact player is not a good strategy for Rick Barnes, given his style of coaching.
Well, then he needs to change his strategy, or they need to change coaches, because that's where the sport's going. This would be synonymous with Josh Heupel coming out and said, I've had enough of this throwing the ball around the park. It is time for us to go to the triple option. Sorry, it's dated and already happened.
Are there really? But is there a go-to impact player on any of these teams in the Final Four this year?
I think Miami has 3.
But that's the thing, that if there's 3, then there's not really one impact player. Tennessee, I think, does have a few impact players that if they stay, look, Santiago Vescovi could be an impact player. I think Julian Phillips could develop into an impact player. And if Zakai Ziegler comes back healthy, he's an impact player.
Well, I mean, if you look at that Miami lineup and those top 3 cats that they had that were affected by NIL, and you put Tennessee and Miami's rosters together, those three guys are starting. I don't know who the two Vols are starting. Maybe Vescovi and a big guy.
Probably Josiah because of the defense.
Or Josiah, yeah. I mean, obviously we're talking about life without Ziegler, but yeah, I mean, I maybe you have three mini impact players. However you want to shake it, I just don't understand how NIL hasn't had a huge impact on basketball, because you just need 1, 2, or 3 guys. If you want to go 3 guys at the semi-impact players like you're talking about, or one Kevin Durant top, whatever the case may be, why did that not happen in the past year?
Yeah, I think that there were players that we thought were going to be impact players that didn't work out. Again, we thought Julian Phillips and Josiah Jordan-James and Santiago Vescovi would all be impact players. Josiah couldn't stay healthy. Santi was really erratic shooting, and Julian Phillips did not look like a 5-star. The other part of this that we're missing is that, look, I have to call him out. Uros Plavsic has not developed for a 7-footer. He's in his 4th year in the program. You would expect a 7-footer to look like you'd expect him to look like an NBA draft pick by this point, developing 4 years in. I think that's where you could really criticize it. I think by next year, Jonas Adu is going to be the starter at center. It's going to be Jonas Adu, Olivier Kamwa. But I do think there is some development we're seeing. Let's not forget, Jemai Mashak became an impact player later down the stretch. I think that there were just some issues that I have a huge problem with Rick Barnes' coaching strategy. His reliance on the mid-range, his X's and O's drive me insane. I'm not so sure his roster assembly is as much of an issue. I'm not sure that these.
Again, the gun issue is a big issue, and I'm not overlooking it. But could Rick Barnes get a Brandon Miller top guy just athletically? I'm not talking about character or any of that. Could he get a Brandon Miller top?
Oh yeah. Rick Barnes has been getting those for ever since he's been at his early days at Texas. He's been getting those. His big issue is Rick Barnes is not good at getting a Brandon Miller and then plugging them in with the rest of a team, of a cohesive team.
Well, no, I'm asking you moving forward with NIL now.
Oh, I think he can. I think they'll be able to. Now, I will say this. I think a lot of Tennessee boosters are investing more in football, but I will say basketball is a smarter investment for 2 reasons. One, as you said, you just need 1 player, but 2, and more importantly, although it's easier to tell how good a college football player is going to be in the NFL than it is college basketball in the NBA, it's much easier to project a high school basketball player to college than a high school football player to college, if that makes sense.
I agree. Taking a look at Tennessee's defensive line and some practice notes as the Vols get back on the field this week for week 2. With some great insight from Caleb Drew and people that I talked to within the program. So stay tuned. Give me 2 minutes, and I will be right back with Tennessee football news that you won't get anywhere else off the Hook Sports.
I know you like the heat. You got to try my signature sauce 87.
Dude, you know I love you, and I love to try your wing sauce. But when it comes to wings, I need them really hot. I hit 105 on the radar gun. I need to be pretty spicy.
Yeah, I know that, man. Look, if sauce 87 isn't enough for you, I guess you can try the Holy Moses or the Grim Reaper.
Now we're talking.
Take it from these Farragut Admirals. When you're craving wings, it's got to be Craven Wings. Visit them online at cravenwings.com.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Before Cadis, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Cadis has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
If you haven't subscribed to YouTube, do so. Please, if you're on board now, hit the thumbs up button. Smoky Mountain Red's comment is posted. I personally think Danny White wants another men's coach. Caleb, before we dive into Tennessee's defensive line and some practice notes, what do you think? Does Danny White want another men's coach? In his heart of hearts, it's tough to do that after a Sweet 16, but in his heart of hearts, would he hire another men's basketball coach?
I think he would. I mean, you're right. He's not going to
prefer to.
Yes, I think Danny White. I know there's been some controversial firings he's made in the past to get his guys in there. So I know he is the type of athletic director that likes to do that. Look, ADs have egos, just like football coaches and basketball coaches. Athletic directors have egos, and I think Danny White thinks he could do better. I think he's not going to do it because it's not worth it. But I do think he thinks he could do better if given the chance. I would trust him to do better because I think he's the greatest hirer of coaches in all of athletics. I wouldn't go for Dusty May. I'm not a big believer in going for a coach because they had one good year at any school ever.
I agree with that. I agree with that totally. Billy Bob Cooter, no relation to Jim Bob, says Barnes is a fossil. Danny can do better. I mean, it's tough for me not to agree with that, to be real honest with you. I mean, I don't want to seem like I'm throwing Rick Barnes under the bus at all. There were injuries. It's still a Sweet 16, but it feels like Sweet 16 is winning a national championship for Tennessee basketball. That's as good as it's going to get.
Do you know how unlucky as a program you have to be to go 1-8 in Sweet 16 games all time? Like there's supposed to be a 50-50 chance of you winning a Sweet 16 game. And Tennessee's 1-8. Like what? Nobody could have a worse record in Sweet 16 games in Tennessee. I don't believe it. Someone point out if they do. I don't know. But my thing with it is, Fred alluded to it last week, and Fred was very defensive of Rick Barnes and the lack of point guard play in Zakai Ziegler. But one of my biggest issues with March Madness, and I know I pick on college basketball a lot as a sport. I think it's a pathetic sport. I'm just going to be honest. It annoys me. But one of the worst parts about college basketball is that March Madness is overcoached, and Rick Barnes is the epitome of overcoaching his players.
Travis says that his wife says, I mean, Barnes is a saint. Smoky Mountain Red says Barnes has done a lot for us, but I think it's time to find that next guy. Let's see what happens this year. Let's see if he accepts NIL and recruiting, because not to do so is silly. Now, we asked that question, what the age, why that hasn't been a bigger factor. Maybe part of that factor is they've been very guarded because they don't want to draw any attention to the athletic department from the NCAA, because if they do, then that could just hurt the current investigation of football. There's a very real possibility of that. But
would you waste NIL money in basketball to hurt yourself with a football investigation? I wouldn't. I would Doug Dickey the basketball program.
I think Tennessee, to be robust, they've got to They've got to address that somehow. So wanted to talk some Tennessee spring practice as the Vols back at it in week 2, and it's brought to you by Craft Treats. I'll tell you more about Craft Treats here in just a second. Let's talk some defensive line. No one knew this time last year that edge rusher Byron Young would turn into such a productive player. The same, to a lesser extent, could be said for Latrell Bumpus. Both are now gone. He was a great contributor, probably a little underrated last year. So let's look at who Tennessee has coming back. I would say on the edge, it's led by Tyler Barron. He has started 8 games in his career, got 69 tackles, 16.5 for a loss. The guy I really like from a talent standpoint is Joshua Joseph. Has like 7'2" wingspan or something bizarro, or 6'10" wingspan. And he's like 6'3". It's just, I mean, he has great length. James Pierce Jr., I believe, and Rodney Garner said this, has to do some maturing. Caleb Herring is one to keep an eye on. I think the guy that everybody just expects to be good is Omari Thomas. But this defensive line without Byron Young, without Latrell Bumpus, can it be as good or better as it was last year, Caleb? What say you?
Yeah, I think it can. I don't think – I have a lot of respect for Byron Young and what he did. And Latrell Bumpus was the ultimate team player. I think Latrell Bumpus was definitely not irreplaceable. There's other defensive linemen that with more experience could do what he did on this roster. Byron Young's a little bit trickier, but I've always felt Tyler Barron could reach Byron Young's level the whole time. And you're right, with Joshua Joseph's getting more experience. Look, they've added Caleb Herring. They've added some guys too. So I think they're going to be a little bit deeper this year with edge rushers. They're still fine in the middle. They have, look, we talked about this back over December when Jordan Phillips hit the transfer portal. I firmly believe that was, Nathan Leacock that came on board as an early enrollee and was making such an impact that Jordan Phillips just hit the portal. Omar Norman Lott has been added, a really key transfer. I think they have a lot more depth and versatility at defensive line this year than they did last year, even with those 2 losses.
I agree. I mean, I think I was talking to you or somebody. I was like, I feel like I'm missing somebody that Bumpus and Young, that there's somebody else that left. I mean, that's really, Young was your best defensive lineman, your best edge rusher last year, but he's not irreplaceable. It's not like Leonard Little went off to the NFL, and or Sean Ellis for that matter. And I think that he's replaceable, and yeah, I think he was still pretty raw. I think he could have a better NFL career than college career, and he had a really good college career. So Tennessee, I believe, will be deeper on the defensive line, which will help with the pace they play on offense. But they want to play vertical. They gotta coach a lot of these guys to play vertical. And I think it was Omar Norman Lott, and specifically that Garner was talking about, that he has to get upfield more. The goal is to rip upfield, and there have been times where Tennessee has had to worry about gap containment with mobile quarterbacks, but that's not now. That is, they want to get upfield and show that they can be a disruptive force. A couple other things from spring camp week 1 is Joe Milton is the starting quarterback, despite what I say or whatever. It would take Milton would have to lose that job. I believe wholeheartedly that it would have to become during the fall. And I think that Joe Milton will go into, they're not going to say it, but will come out of spring as the starter. Will go into August as a starter. Will go into the season as a starter. If he has issues, and he did throw an interception to Arian Carter in practice last week, if he has issues during the season, then things could change. A freshman to watch. Keep an eye on Ethan Davis. I just continue to hear rave reviews about Ethan Davis, the tight end who primarily played more of a receiver position in high school, but I think he's going to be one of Tennessee's best tight ends in a number of years. When did Tennessee last have a great tight end? How far back do we have to go?
Receiving tight end.
Consider Ethan Wolf a great tight end? or a good tight end?
I considered him a good tight end. I think Butch Jones did him a lot of disservices in preparing him for the NFL.
Agreed. I would have to go back to I will go ahead and say that I think Ethan Davis has a great chance of being the best tight end at Tennessee.
What about Michael Rivera?
Yeah, he didn't do a lot for me. I think that Ethan Davis has a great opportunity to be the best tight end at Tennessee since a guy named Jason Witten. More practice notes. CraftTreats.com, though, they've got your dog treats, and they've got the chill pills with the CBD infused treats for your pet that'll help with indigestion, that'll help with any sort of anxiety, be it car rides, social anxiety, and also will certainly help with arthritis like my dog deals with. Cameron Seldon is your running back to watch in Tennessee practice. By the way, I forgot to say, with crafttreats.com, crafttreats.com, use the promo code off the hook, to get 20% off. So there you go. That is a running back to watch, Cameron Seldon. They're spending a lot of time with him. I think he's very good. An incomer to watch, the Vols, I think, need help, obviously, with Darnell Wright and Jeremiah Crawford. I'm hearing great things about John Campbell, who has heavy hands, and I believe will play at left tackle. When all is said and done, they're still doing some shuffling there. We talk about slot receivers. Squirrel White is right now the number one guy at the slot receiver. I know that Caleb loves Dante Thornton, and he may overcome him with size and athleticism, but for right now, Squirrel, as you would expect, is getting most of the reps at the first team. Couple of other more Vols notes that you can find at offthehooksports.com, brought to you by Craft Treats, crafttreats.com. Use the promo code offthehook for 20% off. Omar Norman Lott has been solid and made at least one play in the backfield. BYU transfer Gabe Judy Lawley has been running with the second string defensive backs. Fellow Cougar transfer Keenan Peely looks like he'll be a factor at linebacker. No great surprise. Vols could use
love those Cougars.
What's that?
I said, gotta love those Cougars.
You gotta love Cougars. The Vols could use another center. I don't know what would happen behind them. I don't think Jordan Addison's ready, so they might do some shuffling. So, what stands out to you about some Tennessee football? And Travis said, "Who was the starting quarterback?" Did I miss it? Oh, it was definitely Joe Milton.
He did that in a troll. He was trying to joke with you,
yes,
Dave.
Definitely, I know what he's doing. Third. Go ahead. So, what stands out to you about the standouts of spring camp week 1?
I mean, I'm still on the biggest thing for me is the fact that Cameron Seldon moved to running back. That tells me they're looking to play him immediately. That's the real one. I'm not shocked that Squirrel's ahead of Dante Thornton right now. He should be because of playing in the offense last year. It's 1 week. Here's something that stands out to me. If Squirrel is beating Dante in the slot, does that make it possible that Dante actually beats out maybe like Ramel Keaton for the other wideout spot?
Yeah, I thought about that all along. Or is he when we haven't seen this in Josh Heupel's offense yet, or is he one of the guys that can play both? Because you talk about shortening the wide receiver rotation. They have also specified who plays where, and there hasn't been a lot of movement from one to the other. Is that something that Josh Heupel does because he has young, inexperienced players, even last year with Brew and Squirrel, and obviously the year before with Velas? Does he just want them to learn one position, or do we see guys move around? Thornton, I think, brings you that type of ability to play on the outside as well. So I've been very impressed. Now, the thing with Seldon, I'm going to put my reporter's cap on and be somewhat of a cynic. The thing with Seldon, and he may be the best running back Tennessee's had since Jamal Lewis, but with moving Seldon, it makes me wonder if perhaps he wasn't as good showing up as they thought, and they needed somebody with Jabari Small, for instance, being limited because they don't need him in spring practice. If they just needed a big body to go out there, that does make me wonder that a little bit, Caleb. Now, he may be the best running back in Tennessee football history, but I wonder that.
That's possible. I know that they do that, particularly running back when they don't have a lot of depth. They'll hold guys like Jabari Small. They'll hold their running backs out of spring practice. I feel like, as my understanding with running backs, and you covered practices, so you know more than I do. it's more important for them to stay conditioned than it is for them to get reps, isn't it?
Yes, stay healthy. That's the most important thing. Smoky Mountain Red brought up an old name. David Martin was before Witten by a year or two, but those are our last two good tight ends.
But he was mostly a receiver at Tennessee.
Yes, and I will tell you right now that they tried to talk him into moving to tight end throughout his career, and he would not move. And then what did he do? He had like a huge night, Monday Night Football for the Packers, I believe, guys. Is that right?
The Packers.
And they're like, who's this tight end out of nowhere? Well, when the cash started flowing, he agreed to move to tight end. He should have been moved to tight end, but he refused it for a long time. Portions of the program brought to you by Zul Beer, xulbeer.com. Worldwide award-winning craft beer and panoramic great views with parking in downtown Knoxville, zulbeer.com. Tennessee, the most stable that they have been since when? Going way back. We'll ask Caleb Manning about that here momentarily. I'm Dave Hooker. Stay tuned. 2 minutes, and Tennessee, maybe it's most stable, their athletic department that they've been since the 1990s or perhaps ever. We'll talk.
To own the more that owns every job, then get to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassy, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassy's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassy Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry, I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Ah.
What's up, everybody? This is University of Tennessee tight end Jacob Warren, proud to announce that I'll be working with Craven Wings again this season. And I want you to give your all and try my signature sauce, Sauce 87, at either of the Craven Wings 2 locations, Chapman Highway in Seymour and South North Shore Drive at the Markets of Choto. When you're craving wings, it's gotta be Craven Wings. Online at cravenwings.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Our today's tough question brought to you by Craven Wings, still at 30% across the board. Nobody thinks that Hendon Hooker's jersey should be retired. So thank you for some sanity in that, because it shouldn't. I mean, he had a huge impact, but
yeah, it shouldn't.
No, it shouldn't. But we discussed jersey numbers being retired because Florida is bringing back Tim Tebow's number 15. Who requested number 15, by the way?
Oh, it was the Wisconsin transfer, Graham Mertz.
Yeah, but, I mean, not who, but who requests 15? I mean, 15 is not a. Who else? Can you name one athlete that had 15 and was a phenomenal athlete in any sport?
No, but Taylor Swift has a great song called 15.
This Taylor Swift thing's getting out of control. You and Austin Ward, who covers Ohio State. Tennessee, is it its most stable since the 1990s or even going before that? Now, when I say stable, I also mean productive. Okay, so you could have stability with Wade Houston signing a contract and he's in year 2 and he's not going anywhere for 2 more years and he's just not very good. And the basketball program's not very, very good. So combining good and stable, this is the best Tennessee's athletic department has been since when?
I think right now I'm going late 90s, but there's a chance it becomes ever. So late 90s, if you remember, Tennessee had Rod Delmonico in his prime running the baseball program, just like they have Tony Vitello now, who I think is doing a better job than Rod Delmonico did. They had Pat Summitt. Stability, that's stability on its own in production.
Right.
Summitt. And they had Philip Fulmer running the football program. There was a period when Jerry Green was there with the basketball program, and it was a 4-year period, but it was 4 productive years. Now, the issue is, obviously, Jerry Green, that was the oddball out because he was the one coach that, even though the program was productive, no one really wanted to give Jerry Green credit for the productivity of that program. And maybe based on stories you've told me, they probably shouldn't have been giving Jerry Green credit for the productivity of the program.
No. So let me take, okay, I'm going to take the Pearl era. Okay, and I'm defining it by basketball. But I will take Bruce Pearl was coach at Tennessee from what years?
05 to 11.
Gosh, I really can't take that because the football program was in trouble. So
that first year he was there was the first year the football program missed out on a bowl game.
And I'm not giving it to Jerry Green because, I mean, he goes and the baseball program wasn't great, but Jerry Green goes on ball calls and calls out the administration. That's not a stable athletic department.
That was at the end, though. I'm talking late 90s. I'm talking, okay, let's not forget there was a moment, 1998, Tennessee wins the national championship in football. They're defending 3-time national champs in women's basketball, and they're top 10 in men's basketball.
Okay, well, let me just ask you this. If I told you that on a road game, the team bus had to pull over to a liquor store, would you tell me that's a stable basketball program?
I would not. Did that happen?
I'm not saying that it definitely did happen, but I'm saying it definitely may have happened. That's the best way that I can. Okay? It definitely may have happened.
I mean, look.
Definitely probably happened.
I was an outsider at the time. So just for context, I was 11 and 12. Like my first foray into college athletics was following Tennessee football, but it was actually following Memphis Tiger basketball, which was a common thing for those people who grew up in Memphis. I didn't understand because I was obviously away from the program why there was so much hate for Jerry Green with Tennessee being, and it was before that last year I realized that. Now that I've learned and done more research, I realized that, the dislike for Jerry Green goes back for from the time he took the job. It sounds like that was a scrambled hire to begin with.
Yes, it very much was. They had Kevin Stallings, and I've told you that story, but they blew the Kevin Stallings hire. I think it's the most stable ever in my lifetime. And by my lifetime, I'm including, I was born in 74. So I've done research in the 70s. I'm not as good as Caleb is going back and doing research. He does like in the 50s, 40s and beyond. But I think it's as stable as ever. And I say that because you had Rick Mears, who had Ernie and Bernie in the 70s. Ray Mears. Rick Mears is a race car driver. You had Ray Mears, who had Ernie and Bernie. But let's be frank. I mean, he ended up getting sideways with the university. It was almost like they were better by default. And
the football program was a disaster during that time.
The football program was a disaster. I'm not going to give it to Jerry Green just because of the success. I believe that, he benefited a lot from uber talent, Yeah, I mean, I think in my lifetime, 70s, 80s, 90s, 10 or 2000s, 10s, yes, it's the most stable in 50 years. It's the most stable in a half a century. I don't think there's really any argument to be had for that. I mean, we can gripe about Kelly Harper just making the Sweet 16. We can gripe about Rick Barnes just making the Sweet 16. That's still the Sweet 16. That ain't bad. The football team seems very stable with a coach that wants to hang around, and that can be unusual. You don't think that Alabama fans each and every year wonder if this is Nick Saban's final year? They do. You don't think that other coaches or other programs worry if their coaches are going to get poached? They do. The exception would be Kirby Smart at Georgia because he played there. But you have a coach that seemingly really, really wants to be at Tennessee, a football coach, and that's the most important thing. And then everything falls in after that, Caleb, and it falls in place quite well. You're making the Sweet 16. And yeah, I think this is the most stable Tennessee's program has been since I've been alive, since 1970.
I mean, I would definitely entertain most stable. I mean, I would definitely entertain that idea.
Combined with successful.
Right. Stability and success. It's still a little hard because, yes, you take points away from Jerry Green. Would I take this Tennessee basketball era over the Jerry Green era? Easily. Not even thinking about it. Not even a question.
See, now when you phrase it like that, that's weird because that team was so entertaining and talented and fun.
Yeah, but 5 straight NCAA tournaments and 2 Sweet 16s versus 4 NCAA tournaments and 1 Sweet 16 and an SEC tournament title in Rick Barnes' name, an SEC regular season title in Rick Barnes' name, a period at number 1, 30-plus win season.
But they were just so – I agree with everything you said, but they were just so fun.
I get it, but like, okay, I'm saying, but if you compare where you might give the edge to the late 90s, though, is football and women's basketball were so productive during that time, more than now. I mean, you're talking, again, women's basketball was coming off the greatest season in the history of the sport with the 3 Meeks, and football was winning the national title, going 13-0. So that's where, but I'm with you. And Rod Delmonico was, again, he was stable with baseball. They would make the College World Series every 4 years.
Yeah, but again, you combine that with success. They didn't care. They didn't care about Rod Delmonico. They didn't care that Tennessee's baseball program was languishing and was at best going to be a College World Series team, once every 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, it was right about then.
I mean, now if Tony Vitello starts turning in a once every 5 or 6 years program that makes the College World Series, there's a problem. Right?
No, that's true. That's a good point.
I mean, that was back in the days where they held spring camp and preseason, or not spring camp, but they held preseason football practice in the outfield of the baseball field. I mean, that tells you what they thought about baseball right then.
Yeah.
I mean, they would tear the outfield just totally apart and have to resod it.
Dave, let's reverse this because you were there during the worst. Let's pick the year when Tennessee was at its least stable. And I got a year in mind, and I don't know if we have the same year, but a calendar year.
Well, I guess I would have to say 2010 with having to go after Dooley because everybody else said no.
I'd say 2011, but you're close with 2010. Because I think the whole Dooley period was unstable because he was not wanted and the program was on fire and he didn't help matters. But 2011 was the NCAA investigation. It was the year, tragically, Pat Summitt revealed her dementia diagnosis. It was the year they had to fire Bruce Pearl because of the scandal. And it was the year Mike Hamilton was basically forced aside. That all happened in 2011. Oh, and Derek Dooley lost to Kentucky that year.
I always wonder if Tennessee would have been better off if Mike Hamilton would have stayed.
I think Mike Hamilton made some critical errors.
Well, he made some that I can't even share, but I do think he was very insightful with the Lane Kiffin hire. I thought that was outside the box. He was in basketball circles, so he made the Bruce Pearl hire. Smoky Mountain Red says, Dave, I would have hired you over Dooley. Thank you.
But
done a fantastic job.
And look, I want to say this up front. I thought he got an unfair shake when he was at Tennessee. I understand why, but Quanzo Martin dealt with so much when he was at Tennessee. The 3 years he was there, that still wasn't a good hire. Mike Hamilton admitted later, that he would have hired Rick Byrd, and he said, I just couldn't envision Rick Byrd not coaching at Belmont. I didn't want to see it. I'm like, you're the athletic director at another school. You shouldn't think like that.
I didn't hear that. The bottom line is, though, whether or not he was great in an administrative role and whether or not he was great at hiring basketball coaches, you are defined by what happens to the football program. And the moment that Lane Kiffin decided to bolt, it was over. I mean, because they took the power from him. I still remember it was a Friday afternoon, and this Dooley guy came out of nowhere. We got a tip that it was Dooley, and we were so blindsided by it that we didn't even run it because we just didn't believe it. And sure enough, they had decided on Dooley when they still had interviews to make. Talking about some Tennessee football and the athletic department, brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com is the way for you to save a lot of money, thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, because he's been in the real estate business for over 40 years. He is phenomenal. AndyMasonRealEstate.com, and his group is unbelievable. Best prices, best service. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. It's pretty easy. And I remind you that portions of the program brought to you by Bassey Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive. Bassey Lawn and Garden, whether you're coming in from Knoxville, Nashville, Chattanooga, it doesn't matter. Bassey Lawn and Garden will save you a ton of money with their buying power. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Tomorrow on the program, we look forward to continuing to talk some Tennessee football as the Vols back on the practice field. That should be a lot of fun, and we'll continue to give you some insight that you just won't get anywhere else. Tell a friend. We appreciate that. Don't forget to download the app. Make sure your notifications on. For instance, there this morning is an audio portion of Cooper Mace that is right there on any podcast platform. So for Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.